Hey guys, it's been a while. I'm sorry about that, but we got a new video. We're going to be looking at 6 new shows from this season. We are going to be looking at the first episode of each of these shows, looking at the score and speculating where the score will go for the entire season. By the time this video is actually out, we'll probably be like 3 or 4 episodes into the season, but these are all based off of notes and a script I made at each first episode. Why 6? I've watched 8 or 9, but these were the first 6 I watched, and the other ones I just didn't make. I thought the video would be too long. This probably goes without saying, but this won't be a super in-depth breakdown because there's so much to talk about, but I hope you enjoy nonetheless. These are also in no particular order, except the last 2 are my favorites, and there's only a couple where I'll explicitly point out if they're really good or not. If you're wondering where the heck I've been for however long it's been, be sure to stick around after the video, I'll explain everything then. With that said, let's get started on my first ever seasonal soundtrack speculation. In the first corner, we have the wacky, zany, zombie, brainy show about undead idols, and boy, this show threw me for a loop. Of course, I'm talking about Zombieland Saga. This first episode does a great job of utilizing the music to subvert your expectations and create a brilliant air of dark comedy. It has an emphasis on heavy metal at the end, but during the show there are instances of classic horror and slice-of-life style music. Because of this, my guess is that this show is going to be very interesting for its unique blend of styles, odd orchestrations, and different genres. If I had to guess, I would say that there will probably be a group song at the end of each episode, potentially being of different styles each week, and that most meaningful things will happen with the backdrop of said music. That being said, there might be a scene or two, like when a member of the band decides to quit or something like that, that uses a traditional score, but I feel that most big emotional moments will happen during the potential end of the episode songs that might be of several different genres. Next up, we have a genuine jolly joyride Jojos Part 5. This odd gangster drama set in Italy has a pretty expected first episode soundtrack, honestly. It plays on the classic island sound that we hear in Japanese scoring, think some VNs or even Super Mario Sunshine to a certain degree. Clearly this is also while leaning into the Italian influence, but still keeping to its roots. Another interesting bit of scoring is the inclusion of more dramatic and older Hollywood-style scoring, at least in terms of thematic material. This seems to be pretty common for JoJo though. It always plays a bit on the nostalgic side. Obviously, this includes the classic JoJo style with the large presence of electric guitar, which ends up sounding really cool. It's like an older score mixed with some modern sensibilities. The fight scene with Bruno in the tram actually reminds me quite a lot of some JRPGs, particularly of an organ piece in Kingdom Hearts. The melodic structure and underlying rhythmic pulses are very similar to something you would find there. So, final speculation. Honestly, this one's probably the easiest one. I think we're going to get some classic JoJo action, big electric guitar sequences, along with other modern instruments playing motivic but still very melodic tunes during the big hype moments. Aside from that, though, it seems to lean into these classic scoring styles and is really reminiscent of older Hollywood films, which is a pretty good fit for a gangster drama. Third on our list, we have Honda-san. This spooky skeleton bookstore worker needs no introduction. Or maybe it does. It's a comedy about a bookstore worker. There you go. The first episode has a pretty fun score which matches what it's playing to. It's playful, a bit jazzy, similar to something of the Persona series' more chill and laid-back tunes, particularly like Persona 4. There's also a lot of repetitive jingle-like writing, which makes for good, unobtrusive background music. The orchestration has a heavy focus on playful and upbeat, using things like electric piano and whistling. On the other side of the spectrum, though, the score will often go over-the-top epic or dramatic to play up the comedy in certain scenes. Playing into a big epic style or over-the-top horror adds a lot to make a fun atmosphere that contrasts the often mundane situations. What the music really does well is helping the viewer to understand and relate to Honda-san, who is already a very relatable character. The music often acts as an extension to inner monologue. Even when Honda-san is talking out loud, it helps the viewer maintain a level of intimate understanding. This really aids in showing the feeling in a situation, adding to the comedy. Speculation? Probably similar to the first episode, honestly. I think we have all the building blocks. I think that it will focus on this upbeat, slightly jazzy tone with moments of absurd, over-the-top writing. I think we'll also continue to see abrupt shifts in tone, for example, playing something uplifting and hopeful just to have it stop abruptly. This is very common in comedic scores, and I think we'll see that used often here as well. Number 4, we've got the nice little controversy show of the season, Goblin Slayer. If you don't know what Goblin Slayer is somehow, it's pretty much what it sounds like. There's a dude, he slays goblins. The goblins are pretty nasty, and there's some graphic violence as well as a rape scene. Just, I'd look into the show maybe before watching it if you're sensitive to either of those things. Personally, the show didn't really resonate with me, but we don't really care about that as much here because we are looking at the music. The first episode starts with a standard Japanese fantasy score at the beginning, which is used to subvert expectation or contrast against the show's darker themes. After this section, though, the score goes into a much more classic, epic film score, even going so far as at one point reminding me a bit of something you'd find in the Kick-Ass films, with the slower muted electric guitar and undulating string section lying underneath. That being said, that's more to do with the orchestration, as the melodies within the orchestration sound more rooted in the fantasy sound, if that makes sense. Hopefully it does. Another point of interest is the heavy metal sound using heavily distorted guitar, double bass pedal drum kit, and choir. This reminds me of darker and more intense boss battles in some JRPGs. This is followed by a piano cue that is pretty standard fare for a fantasy score down to very standard orchestration and classic melodic structure. Honestly, I think the score will mainly remain the same. If they flesh out Goblin Slayer and have more backstory there, it could have some more emotional pieces. Also, as characters develop, there is a lot more room for more emotional pieces to develop. As for the action, they actually seem to have a bit of leeway. They could either return to that heavy metal Doom-esque sound or do something a little more fantasy-based. I would guess the former, though. I think it will focus on these two styles, and the big epic sound and the classic JRPG sound. So, these last two are my personal recommendations, not only because I really like their scores, but also because I'm just quite enjoying both series. These two soundtracks are about tied to me right now, but we'll see how they develop over time. The first of these two is Irozuku, which is a modern fantasy about a colorblind girl who gets sent back in time using magic to hang out with her grandmother while she was a kid. It's kind of a cool concept. Anyway, it's PA Works, so you already know the show is going to look gorgeous, and it has an almost watercolor look to it in my opinion. Why is this important? Because that's kind of how I would describe the score as well. While it may start off with a classic sounding piano theme, something you'd maybe find in a rom-com, when the strings come in it really fleshes it out and becomes much more emotional. It actually slightly reminds me of older Disney backing tracks in some ways. The score in this first episode likes to use very soft timbres, clarinet, guitar, piano to a certain extent, and all of them are EQ'd or played in ways to make them purposefully sound softer. My favorite thing about this score is probably how the actual sonic space is structured. It's more like small phrases to evoke feelings of warmth or emotion. While there are melodies in strings, woodwinds, piano, and such, it seems that melodies are meant to feel more motivic than thematic. The closest we come to a real theme is in the viola or violin, but even then it feels more like a fleeting fancy than a strong theme you're meant to latch onto. This score seems to be very minimalistic and focuses much more heavily on textural writing than melodic writing. This style of composition is actually one of my personal preferred ways to compose, so I really like this style and I'm a little bit biased, I'm sorry. It's very good at capturing a mood and boiling it down to its essence. It's all about tone color and texture, and for a show about a girl who can't see color, the soundtrack is absolutely full of it. Absolutely wonderful usage of tone color so far. I really liked it a lot. Speculation time. For me, I think it will probably stay like this, but I wouldn't be surprised if at some point we did get some clearer themes for characters, as it seems it will be a very character-driven show. I also could see some moments where the score gets a little quirky if the show allows for some moments like that. I think for the most part, though, it will stay with this textural style of writing. Last up is probably my favorite show of the season, Bunny Girl. The show seems to follow arcs of supernatural cases based on ideas from quantum physics and theoretical physics. While the tone and feeling is very different, it reminds me of Monogatari in the way that it's structured. Music time. This score is what I would call somewhat emotionally heavy. It has light orchestration but lots of reverb and often EQs things in a way to give the instruments a bit more body and presence. The melodic writing is also fairly sparse, opting a lot of the time for more textural writing. You see a theme with what I like right now? Probably should. That being said, there are some good melodies in the show. One in particular came in on the violin about halfway through the episode. I really loved this melody, enough to make a note that I really liked it, and particularly I liked the glissando in the middle of the phrase. But the melodies, again, never really seemed to be there to be easily remembered. Aside from this, there's also a pretty large usage of 7th chords and generally jazzy instrumentation. Glassy flute synths, e-piano, piano. Overall, the score is pretty minimalistic. Pieces are often more atmospheric, which is kind of a good thing for the sound director because it means that they can easily use the same piece multiple times without the viewer getting tired of it. And they do. Already in the first episode, I heard a couple pieces repeating. My guess for this show is that the more atmospheric, minimalistic pieces will pop up a lot throughout the show, some probably even multiple times an episode. I wouldn't be surprised if each arc introduces 1 or 2 new pieces that have a bit more of melodic meat to them, but I'm not expecting anything that I can latch onto as a main theme, or something I'll be humming when I think of the show outside of maybe the ED. I think the reverb will be a constant, and that this kind of hazy, heavy, and somewhat distant feeling will remain throughout the score. So there you have it. Those were pretty much my thoughts on this season. My 2 favorite scores so far are Irozuku and Bunny Girl. Obviously, I think they made that clear. Oh, also, the best score right now is actually Revue Starlight came out on iTunes. Go buy it. It's actually really rare for anime companies to put their scores on iTunes. So please, patronize that. That would be really great. As for me, that was about it. This was a new kind of video, a lot less in-depth, a little bit more fun. I've been really busy. I'll explain that in a second when I come back on the video. But yeah, if you stuck around, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time. Hey guys, it's been a while. I'm sorry about that. First of all, I wanted to give a huge shout out and thank you to Hiding in Public, who edited a good majority of this video's video. It really took some stress off of my shoulders. If you haven't checked out his channel, you really should. Some of the most real, authentic content on YouTube. Wonderful content creator. Go check him out if you haven't already. So to answer the question of where have I been, basically it boils down to just busy work. So much work. We've finished 3 films since the last video I put out. Worked on 3 films with another one in November. I've done music for a video game, which I'm actually working under a pen name, which is pretty cool, in my opinion. I think that's kind of cool. I've never worked under a pen name before. I'm also going to be on a TV show. I don't know how much of that I can talk about. Not like on a TV show. My music is going to be on a TV show. And then I also went to Japan for a week and a half. And that was super gorgeous. If you guys want to see pictures, let me know on like Twitter or something. That's probably the easiest way for me to share those pictures. Visited with my parents for like 4 or 5 days. So I've just been crazy busy. And that's basically what's been happening. Tons of work, been in the studio all the time, and I took a couple vacations, which were really needed. If you're still watching and you liked the video and for some reason you're still watching for this outro section, make sure to subscribe if you feel like it. I'd really appreciate it. If you want to know about my personal life or see some funny memes, stuff like that, be sure to follow me on Twitter. Link will be down in the description below. The next big major thing is going to be the Revue Starlight full score analysis, and I'm going to probably do that in 2 parts because of the duality of the score. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you have a great day and a greater life, and I will see you in the next one.